Good morning, my friend. Dr. Lee Warren here with you back for some more self-brain surgery. I'm so grateful to be here with you on the podcast, learning how we can become healthier and feel better and be happier together. We're going to smash neuroscience and faith together to help us do those things. Really want you to get to that flourishing place in your life. And to do that, you've got to get this internal locus of control, this understanding that you have processes that were built and designed into your life where you can take mind down control of your brain and your life and your epigenetics, and everything that happens is way more in your control than you may think. It's not about your genetics. It's not about your upbringing. It's not about your traumas and your tragedies. It's about your decision that however things have been for you in the past, they can be different going forward. That's what we're here to get done. This is episode 3 of a series called Planning Your Self-Brain Surgery. We've been talking about something that in neurosurgery we call approaches, and we call them that in self-brain surgery too. And today we're going to cover an approach called Maybe Science Can Help Me. If you missed the first 2 parts of this series, please go back and listen, because I want you to know what we're talking about. Approaches are the cornerstone, the bedrock set of decisions that we make in surgery to be able to get our patient in the right position, to bring all the right tools, techniques, the right thinking to whatever we need to get done. Now, of course, in self-brain surgery, you're both the patient and the surgeon. So it's critical. If you want to take good care of yourself, as we seek this process of becoming healthier, feeling better, and being happier, then you got to get your approach right. You got to understand that you have an approach and that you're choosing one that's going to give you the best results. A while back, about a year ago, I got this incredible email. I want to bring it back to you today from a woman named Erin in St. Louis. And she said she'd been practicing the first commandment of self-brain surgery for 6 months at the time. So it's been about a year and a half now. Erin, if you're still listening, I'd love to hear you give us an update on how these things are going for you. But Erin wrote that she'd been taking aggressive control of her thought life and refusing to participate in her own demise. That's the first commandment of self-brain surgery. Let me read you what Erin wrote. She said, Dr. Warren, I am relentlessly refusing to participate in my own demise by taking my thoughts captive for Christ. Before learning the first commandment of self-brain surgery, I spent most of my time day and night drowning in despair because of my own thoughts. Today, I'm 6 months into practicing the first commandment, and I'm so very happy to report that I am no longer drowning. I'm perplexed, but not driven to despair. I'm afflicted, but not crushed. There's more to me than my massive thing. Thanks to you for your words and insight that have clicked with me, Erin. Hey, friend, that is exactly why we do this work. It's exactly why the 10 commandments of self-brain surgery are so very important. They will change your mind, and they will change your life, my friend. But only if you do what Erin said. You have to go all in. It's time to commit. Listen, if you haven't fully committed to this lifestyle of self-brain surgery, if you still think it's some sort of metaphor, some sort of self-help thing, I want you to go all in with me. Just trust me. Now, this year, it's almost August, and we're not going to do a formal all-in August where we have an episode every day like we did last year. We're not going to do that this year because we're getting ready for my new book to come out, The Life-Changing Art of Self-Brain Surgery, and I'm going to be giving you a lot of content this coming month related to that. But if you haven't ever done All In August with us, I would encourage you to read my friend Mark Batterson's book, All In. It'll change your life. One of the best books I've ever read. And go to our YouTube channel, at Dr. Lee Warren on YouTube, and check out the All In August playlist. Lauren took all 31 episodes from last year, and she put them in a playlist. So you can do All In August and gather yourself some community and a team to do that with you. There's a link in the show notes to the All In August playlist. I think there's only 30 of those episodes. We're having a little trouble with one of the files. Lauren's working on that. Maybe we'll have all 31, but there's certainly 30 of them available already. And this is about getting your thought life, your brain-mind life under control. So get yourself a team, share it with some friends. You can build yourself an all-in community in the comments to these episodes. You can encourage each other, and we'll be monitoring them during August, and we'll interact with you. So go subscribe at Dr. Lee Warren on YouTube, and let's go all in together, okay? Do what Erin did, and take that commitment into All In August and beyond. Just start. Don't worry about having everything perfect. Don't worry about having it all figured out. It's just like when you're going to become a neurosurgeon or any other kind of doctor. You go to medical school, and when it's July 1st, you start your residency, even if you don't think you're ready. So let's go all in, okay? Let's get after it. I'm just encouraging you, friend. I want you to start today. That's why I say that at the end of every episode. Start today. Don't wait anymore to live your own life in the way that God called you to. One of the ways that you start today, though, is by choosing an approach of how you're going to process your life. How are you going to think about your life? How are you going to decide what you're going to think about? How are you going to decide what's true and isn't true, what reality is? And by the way, go to my newsletter, drleewarren.substack.com. We're in the middle of a series about reality, about what perspective and perception have to teach us about what's real and what isn't real. It'll really help you understand the science behind what you see and how you think about it, and how that actually has a lot to do with what turns out to be real in your life. So how are you going to decide what to commit to and not to commit to? And more importantly, how are you going to decide what resources and possibilities and opportunities are available to you? And to do that, you've got to have some type of a worldview. I call it an approach, some type of a set, some set of techniques, ideologies, thought processes, behaviors, worldview that you're going to bring to the fight, okay? As you try to make these radical changes in your life, or maybe they're not radical. Maybe you just need a little performance boost. Maybe everything's going great and you just feel like you're not quite getting everything done that you need to. You're not quite hitting some target that you've set for yourself. Maybe you've been bumping your head up against some limitation, some wall that isn't quite right, and you just need to figure out the subtle changes that you need to make to really break through and really commit to it. Remember, if you want to commit to real change, it's not dramatic what's required. 1% change in something per day will produce a 37% change over that thing in the course of a year. Can you imagine being 37% better, 37% closer to your financial goal, 37% healthier, 37% better in your relationship? All it takes is 1% per day. But to do that, you got to have a strategy, a set of tactics, an approach to how you get after this. And that's what we're after. And if so, it's time to go. Okay? The last 2 episodes, we've been talking about the idea that most people in the world, sadly, don't even realize that they're even using an approach. And that's a terrible approach. It's like we talked about last time, like not having a financial plan is a plan. It's just a really bad one. And we talked about the fact that there are 4 real approaches. And if you count the I don't really have an approach as an approach, then there's 5. We covered that in the first episode. But there's 4 really that people use to handle their lives. And the fact that approaches have consequences is something I don't want you to miss. When you choose an approach, it means you're not choosing another approach. It means you're leaving on the field some of the things that you might have been able to do with a different approach, and you're bringing into possibility a set of consequences that you'll have for choosing the approach that you have. So it's important then to understand what the consequences of each of these approaches are, what the pros and cons and benefits and opportunities and exposures and liabilities that each one brings. And I really want you to get this. I want you to understand what happens when you commit to an approach for managing your mind and managing your brain and managing your life so that you can become healthier and feel better and be happier. But before we get going today, I just can't encourage you highly enough, friend. Do not choose to go all in, all by yourself. Don't choose to do it alone. Build yourself a community, okay? Now, you got the people on this podcast, the people in the newsletter. There's all kinds of people pulling for you or praying for you, but you need some people in your real life that can help you get this done. And one way you could do that would be to share these episodes with your friends. Like right now, copy the link and text it to 4 or 5 people and say, hey, let's do this together. Let's listen to this. Let's learn it. Let's apply it to our lives together. Let's encourage each other. Let's be accountable to one another. Before you talk yourself out of going all in, think of 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 friends who you would like to commit to going all in with, to have a community, an accountability group, somebody to help you look out for yourself, because it goes through recovery alone. You have to have community. That's how you make it stick. That's the reason we have churches, by the way. The Bible says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. Not because God wants us in a big building so he can get a report from the angels how many people go to church. It's not that. It's because being a community is essential to your success in your life, to going through the hardships that you're going to face, to breaking through challenges, to having somebody call you out on your stuff, because we all have issues, right? My old pastor, Chris, used to say, if you don't think you got an issue, that's your issue. Like, all of us have something, right? So the reason we have teams and groups is people need to be in community. It's been shown recently, some really good research, that loneliness is worse for your body than cigarette smoking. It causes cardiovascular disease. Like, don't be in this thing alone. Get yourself a community. Share it with some friends. Share it with some people. Share it with your spouse and say, let's do this together. Let's go all in together. Let's make it happen, okay? That's what I want for you. That's what I pray for you. Lisa and I and Tata are praying for you that you will get this done in your own life, okay? And today we're going to talk about another approach. When you're tired of believing that nothing can help you, when you're frustrated with the type of minor improvements that hacking the system using that maybe something can help me approach that we talked about last time can produce, then you need more. And what gets you to more reliably, regardless of your underlying belief system, is to dive into understanding how things really work. And I call this the maybe science can help me approach. There's a whole chapter about each of these approaches, by the way, in my upcoming book. I'm going to be releasing that cover and information about the book, how you can pre-order it very soon. We're building a launch team and all kinds of stuff. We're getting ready to launch that book. It's going to change your life. Okay, but in the book, we talk about these approaches. And today we're going to talk about the maybe science can help me approach. That's what we're going to get after today. We're going to do some self-brain surgery to feel better. I want you to be happier. I want things to work better for you, okay? And they can, but you have to change, because remember the mantra, what got you here won't get you there. And the definition of hope is the belief that you can get there from here. But if you're stuck on here, you got to change something to get there. So if you're ready to learn a powerful approach to get it done, I have a question for you. Hey, are you ready to change your life? If the answer is yes, there's only one rule. You have to change your mind first. And my friend, there's a place where the neuroscience of how your mind works smashes together with faith, and everything starts to make sense. So I'll ask you again, are you ready to change your life? Well, this is the place. It's Self-Brain Surgery School. This is where you learn the truth about how science and faith are designed to work together to answer the big questions that trauma, tragedy, and other massive things bring us. Here is where you learn to manage your mind, optimize your brain, and navigate your life to become healthier, feel better, and be happier. This is the Dr. Lee Warren Podcast, where we go deep into how we're wired, take control of our thinking, and find real hope. This is where we leave the past behind and transform our minds. This is where we start today. Are you ready? This is your podcast. This is your place. These are your people. And now is your time, my friend. Let's get at it. Okay, you ready? Let's scrub in. I want you to take some deep breaths. Remember, we scrub in before we do surgery. And that process is about more than just cleaning our hands up. It's about getting our mind right. It's about leaving stuff out of the operating room that has no business there. So I want you to spend this time. If you're going to invest this time, I want you to clear out your mind and get yourself focused so you can learn and grow and change. There's no point in superficially listening to something. The neuroscience is clear. You have to pay attention if you want neuroplasticity to happen. You have to pay attention and intention to make changes really stick. And so I want you to think for a second about anything that might be distracting you or worrying you. Just apply for a little while here your full attention and perspective to getting this information into your brain, into your mind, so you can make changes in your life with it, okay? Now, we talk about scrubbing in. We're washing stuff off our hands that has no business in the OR. We're clearing our mind out. I want you to use that breathing process, that abide prayer method that I taught you. It's all about getting your left brain turned down a little bit so you stop thinking everything is a fact and everything is the way it is and it's got to be this way. And you start understanding that the right half of your brain is about perspective, big picture. And it's not that you're always going to be a screw up and you're never going to get it right and you can't overcome this thing that you went through. None of that stuff is true. The right side of your brain will come in and say, you know what? That was a hard time in my life. And maybe I did make some mistakes, but I learned and I've grown and God brought me through that fire and I've become more resilient and I can see a different path and I can see a bigger picture and a bigger story. That's the kind of thing I want you to do right now, to kind of get that balance between left and right and get yourself kind of centered and ready to learn. And that abide method, that approach and breathe, that getting your parasympathetics activated and calming your nervous system down and getting yourself into a state where your frontal lobes and your cerebral central executive network can get involved and get kind of stuff figured out and get in that process of learning and growing and changing and not just reacting to things. And then that invite and depend and experience process that we talked about before. There's a couple of episodes about that, where you're just going to depend on the fact that if God said your system is going to work this way, and if the science says your system is going to work this way, then you can depend on it. You can count on it. And it'll work that way for you too, not just everybody else, but it'll also work that way for you. And then you can begin to experience it, that taste and see thing that the Bible talks about all the time, where you can say, hey, I'm going to depend on the system working like it's supposed to work, even for me. And then I'm going to step in and I'm going to experience that. And I'm going to learn and grow and change because I'm going to see it work for me, not just for other people, but for me too. Remember, I gave you a good definition of the difference between faith and hope. If you believe that faith is that God can do the things that he said he can do, then hope is the belief that he will do those things for you. That's hope. Okay, so let's take it one level deeper, not just approach and breathe and invite and depend and experience, but I want you to think like a surgeon for a minute. And when I prepare for surgery, there's a process that I go through in my mind to get things ready and what I'm getting ready to do. And approach is a big part of it that we're going to talk about in a minute. But I want to use the same acronym, ABIDE, ABIDE, and I want you to use the word assess first, okay? Taking some deep breaths, we're getting ourselves calmed down, and we're going to assess the situation rationally, okay? Not based on our history, not what our dad always said, not what our spouse used to say when they were being mean to us, not what our boss said about us. We're going to assess it rationally. Like look at the situation from an external observer, somebody who cared about you, somebody who loved you but was objective and would tell you the truth. What would they say about the situation? Not just your old story that you got for yourself, but assess the situation honestly. And then believe that if you apply good sound training, like I'm giving you now, to the situation and you operate your nervous system the way it was designed, that you're going to see results. That if you start doing something different than you've done before, you'll start getting a different outcome than you've had before. So believe it, okay? And then in surgery, we get to this point where we have to stop contemplating, stop thinking, and we have to start operating. So at some point, when I go to the OR, even if I'm scared, even if I'm nervous, even if it's a dangerous case or a trauma or an emergency, at some point I have to hold my hand out and say to one of my scrub techs, to Jason or Jackie or Megan or Carla or any of them, and I have to say, hand me the knife, scalpel. And I've got to take that knife and I have to make an incision. I have to start that operation. And friend, it's time for you to stop contemplating your own life and to get after it and start making some progress. So it's time today to make that incision. And once we've opened the skin, I'm not trying to be graphic here. I just want you to see this as a metaphor of what you're actually doing when you're applying these principles and you're making your brain different than it was when we started this podcast. Once you start that process of opening things up, it's time to go deeper, okay? It's time to take it to a level you've never taken it before because you're ready not just for some surface level change. Remember we talked about the difference between surface level changes and identity level changes, okay? It's one thing if you say, I want to win a race. Then you might train to win that race, and then you might get back on the couch and start eating Cheetos again. You've made a surface level change in your life and you accomplished something, okay? But an identity level change is I want to become an Olympic gold medalist like Steve Messler. If you want to really change who you are, you've got to really change what you do, and you've got to really change what you think, and sometimes what you believe, and sometimes your habits, and sometimes your people, okay? So it's time to go deeper now, because we want deeper results than we've ever had before. And then what are we going to do next? We're going to expect that if we operate the system properly with good training and good application and we do everything right, that we're going to expect the system to work like it's supposed to work, okay? We're going to expect a good outcome. Are there sometimes things that happen, some complications, some trouble, some other people that let us down? Of course there are. But if you do your part, you trust the system, you apply sound training, and you go for it, you're going to get different results than you've gotten before. Will they be perfect? No. Will everything always go your way? No. We're tired of these surface level changes. We're ready to go deeper, and we're going to expect a different outcome than we've gotten before. 2 places in the New Testament, Jesus said, in this world you're going to have trouble. The thief comes to steal and kill and destroy. You're promised that you're going to have some issues and some problems, but guess what? Your brain is designed to get stronger when you go through hard things. That's what the Bible said, that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Because once you figure out that you actually are wired to get stronger when you go through hard things, friend, then you become this sort of almost impervious to circumstance person where you know what you believe, you know what you care about, you know what your life is about, you know what your purpose is, and then adversity at that point only serves to make you stronger. Does it hurt? Yes. Will you grieve? Yes. Will you suffer sometimes? Yes. But you're going to expect that it'll be different than it was before you understood that you're not just your brain. Okay, let's get after it. So what are the 5 approaches that people take to life? We talked about the first 3 over the past couple of weeks. But just to recap, in case you missed it, we talked about it a second ago. There's a huge percentage of people that never even realize that they have an approach to their life. They just take whatever comes. They sleep in, wake up when the alarm goes off, they rush around, they react to things, it just happens. There's some good people, some smart, educated people that live their lives like that. They just que sera, sera, and see what happens. And I just think that they just think that life is what it is, and there's nothing they can do about it. So they don't even think about the fact that they're using a worldview, a system, the Weltanschauung, the Germans call it. They don't even think about it. I'm just here to tell you that's not a very good approach. We talked about that last time. It's just a bad idea to not have a dedicated, intentional thought process about what your approach to your life is going to be. Okay? You got to have a plan. You have to have an approach. And one of the approaches, sadly, that a lot of people use is this idea that nothing can help me. I wrote a chapter about it in the new book, the nothing can help me approach. We talked about it last time. This cynicism, I've tried it before, it didn't work. It's just my genetics. It's just how my brain is. I'm neurodivergent. It's my family upbringing. My habits and my traumas and my issues came from my folks. I've got this Enneagram and I can't change it, okay? I'm neurodivergent and my ADHD and all the things mean that nothing can help me. So I'm just going to blame everything. You have to accommodate me because this is how I am. And I'm just here to tell you, friend, that approach doesn't work, okay? It just doesn't work very well. Because what you end up doing is you decide nothing can help you, and then you need to feel better, so you numb yourself with alcohol or shopping or sex or text messaging or gambling or whatever, Cheetos, okay? And you just don't have to think about it anymore. And then what happens? You get in this spiral of paying tomorrow taxes and having the same issues to deal with over and over all the time. That nothing can help me is a terrible approach. It just doesn't work. There are severe and serious consequences to that. Remember I told you approaches have consequences. And my job here, my entire job, whether you're an atheist or agnostic, a former believer, if you're a Christian who believes that life's going to be terrible, but someday God's going to make it better, whatever you think, I'm just here to tell you, okay? You don't have to live with the nothing can help you approach. There's better alternatives. And we talked about one of them last time, the maybe something can help me approach. Today I'm going to show you, though, that science is an approach too. There's a good and valid and scientific and thoughtful and rational way that science and faith can go together. They play together nicely. Maybe they're designed to go together. We're going to show you that. In this episode, we're going to talk about the science part of it. And next episode, we're going to talk about the faith part of it. But I want you to know that neuroscience in the 21st century has clearly shown that people who develop a habit of practicing meditative prayer, or sometimes they just call it contemplative prayer, meditation, if you want to strip the spiritual stuff out of it, their brains get bigger, and specifically the hippocampus part of your brain, the part that's involved in emotional regulation and resilience and better decision-making, gets bigger. In fact, one study showed 22% increase in the size of the hippocampus from 10 minutes of focused prayer every day for 6 weeks. Okay? Your brain gets structurally better able to handle what you go through when you prepare it with meditative prayer. Why? Because you're designed so that you're communicating with the one person who can actually help you. Remember Psalm 75:3, when the earth teeters and all its people, it is I who steady its pillars. God says, I'm the one that can give you the stability and strength back in your life when everything seems shaky. And what we see is people that spend some time getting into that mode where they apply their minds to calm and listening. And even if it's not spiritual, there's benefit, has been shown very clearly that your hippocampus gets better when you spend some time getting out of that left brain space and into that right brain space. You get less anxious, you get less cortisol, your bodies are healthier, and you feel better. So we just keep learning over and over that what the Bible said all along is true. It's consistent with neuroscience. And when you practice this idea of calming your mind, learning to listen, not letting your left side run away, that your brain gets better and your life gets better, your thought life gets better, your relationships get better, you get healthier over all of those areas. I just don't think that's a coincidence that the Bible said it all along, right? If you want to be less anxious, be more grateful, and the neuroscience turns out to show that that's very clear. So my premise is that the more times as a good scientist that you see something happening, you'll eventually start wanting to know more and ask questions, and you'll start to say, maybe Dr. Warren's onto something there. My job is not to tell you which approach to use, by the way, just to say that there are multiple approaches, and a good scientific approach to your life would be to be willing to stop digging your heels into one approach. So if you've been stuck in this nothing can help me approach, or this maybe something can help me, and I'm just going to try out the non-spiritualized version of meditation, I'm just going to strip all the science and all the faith out of it and just try this thing. Maybe after a while you see you're not getting as much result out of that as you should. Maybe you'll stop digging your heels into one approach and try something else, okay? So when the evidence starts to mount that an approach is not working for you, when you feel stuck, when you're sad or sick or stressed, or you feel like you're just constantly stuck or settling for something, then it's time to do what a good surgeon will do, okay? It's time to switch approaches. And I have a hunch that most of the people listening to my voice right now are listening because something is not working in your life. If somebody's out there listening, it might be you, friend, but somebody's listening because something happened. They went through some kind of massive thing, some kind of trauma or tragedy. They're frustrated. They're stuck. Their husband left. Their wife got glioblastoma. Their kid drowned at a church camp. And if that happened to you, I'm so sorry. You didn't get the promotion. You didn't get that thing that happened, and you're just not making it forward in your life like you want to. And they had a little mental issue. They went through some hard thing they couldn't sort out, and they just are stuck. And their life is confusing now. And what they thought was true isn't true anymore. And they're just in this place where they feel like nothing's working. And if that's you, okay, maybe it's as simple as choosing a different approach. Maybe it's as simple as saying, hey, what got me here won't get me there. It's time to change approaches. Maybe you have a friend that says, hey, this self-brain surgery. Maybe you just got that text today that says, somebody, I wanted to share this episode with you. This self-brain surgery thing might help you. So if you're listening to this and somebody sent you this episode, welcome aboard, okay? I'm just telling you, there are different approaches. And one of them might work for you if you've been stuck. So if you're here trying to find a way forward when something isn't working, I'm just telling you that maybe nothing can help me approach isn't going to work. And if you've gone through something really, really devastating and hard, then maybe something can help me approach isn't going to be enough. That 10% happier idea is not going to be enough, okay? So one of the things that you can do today is just make a decision, okay? We talked about last time, maybe something can help me get to a place where it's not enough. So maybe one of the things you can do today is just say, hey, I'm ready for a different approach in my life. I'm ready to try something different, okay? Let me tell you a story. When I was in college, I worked for a while in a work-study job in the computer lab. I was never a great athlete. I played baseball in high school. I was on a state championship team. I was definitely a bench warmer, but I was not a great athlete. I was more of a mathlete, okay, more of an academic. And by the time I got to college, I was clearly not going to play college sports. I was going to be a guy who went to medical school, so I was kind of a nerd. So one of the jobs I took was to work in the computer lab. Because I was always pretty good with word processing programs like Microsoft Word and WordPerfect. There was a program back then called WordPerfect you may have never heard of if you're younger than me. But WordPerfect was great. I thought it was better than Microsoft Word for years. I was on that camp. I was going to die on the hill of WordPerfect, but Microsoft kind of won that battle. But everybody had to go, you may not remember this, but you had to go somewhere to use a computer and print something off back in those days. Nobody had laptops or personal computers. Hardly anybody could afford that. This is the late 80s, 1987 is when I graduated from high school. So by then, nobody had personal computers in their house like we all have now. We don't take them for granted now, okay? So if you had homework, you had to go to the computer lab and type your term paper and print your projects and do all that stuff. And inevitably, there was always somebody that couldn't figure something out. They'd jam the printer. They couldn't figure the software out. They would accidentally delete their whole term paper. They would get the insert button stuck and overtype everything that they put in. We had to have people in the lab who could solve those problems, and I was one of those guys. I'd load the printer cartridges and change the paper and load the toner, and then I would come over, you'd raise your hand or come get me, and I would go over there and try to help you. And I thought it'd be a great way to meet girls. I help the girls get their papers done. If you're a young college-age man, by the way, let me tell you, being the guy in the computer lab is not a great way to meet girls. It turns out they don't think that's very exciting. It turns out, though, because if I had met Lisa back then, she would have thought it was cool that I worked in the computer lab. She would have thought, hey, I like that big nerd. So let that be a lesson. Wait for the one who sees you for who God made you to be, right? And that concludes the episode of Self-Brain Surgery for Dating, okay? Hey, I'm just kidding. But I was the guy, the nerd in the computer lab, okay? And what I noticed is that there were two kinds of people in the computer lab. There was the person who, they got stuck on something, they wanted some help, and I would go over and try to explain what was wrong, and they would say, don't tell me what's wrong, just fix it. They were the person who just wanted to know what the keyboard stroke was, the command for Control Alt Delete or whatever. They just wanted you to fix it so they could get the work done and get out of there. They didn't care about operating the software. They didn't care about what kind of processor was in the computer. They didn't care about becoming experts at operating the printer. They just wanted to get the work done, okay? They wanted the hack that I could give them for the quick fix so they could get on their way, all right? And so that was one group of people. And then there was another group that wanted to understand what the problem was so that they could do it themselves next time. They wanted to understand the nature of the problem and how it worked and how the software worked. And I loved those people because I didn't have to help them as much, okay? They were like, I want to get this job done, but I keep having the same problem, and maybe you can explain what's really going on, and then I won't need help as much the next time. Maybe then I'll be able to get it done myself. Maybe then I'll really understand what's happening. I want you to recognize that those two groups of people are the difference between the maybe something can help me approach people who are satisfied with that 10% happier idea, like Dan Harris said. Just don't worry about the science behind meditation. Don't worry about the spiritual stuff. Just strip all that out and grab the hack to make your brain work a little better, and that'll make you a little bit happier, and that'll be enough, okay? There's people that are satisfied with their life being a little bit happier, just a little bit better, okay? But here's the problem, all right? Here's the problem. When the cabin washes away with your 8-year-old in it, when your son dies, when your wife gets the fatal brain cancer, when the tumor comes back, when the bank account is empty and you're up against a wall and you don't know what to do and you're going to lose your house, 10% happier is not enough. That approach will leave you failing to move forward in your life because it lacks the power to really help you become resilient in the face of great adversity and trial, okay? 10% happier will not be enough for you in that context. And just like if I just taught you the hack to fix your term paper, okay, and then on the final you had to be in the computer lab to do it yourself, and you got in that some sort of trouble and you couldn't get the document to save or you couldn't get it to print, you wouldn't have me there to help you. That approach wasn't enough for you to really be safe and know how to move forward in your own life, right? And so that's why I love the other group of people who said, I want to know more. I want to understand how it works. I want to go deeper. I want to understand what's happening, all right? That, my friend, is why I want to give you the maybe science can help me approach. Because there's going to come a moment in your life when the maybe something can help me approach is not enough. And I want you to be ready because the consequences of that life of looking for the shortcut, of looking for the hack, of trying to just make it a little bit better is not going to hold up when you have your massive thing happen, when it gets really hard. It's not going to be enough. And so the reason, by the way, that I keep reminding you of the stuff we talked about last time is the same reason that neurosurgeons train for so long, okay? I trained for 14 years after high school before I was allowed to operate on my own, okay? Because it takes a lot of repetition, reps, to finally master these ideas. I want you to constantly be renewing and refreshing what we learned before, because in order to become a safe practitioner of self-brain surgery, and real brain surgery, by the way, normal brain surgery like I practice, you have to have a lot of reps because it needs to become second nature. Remember, neurons that fire together, wire together? So we keep saying things over and over several times because I want you to build synapses because you've had a lifetime of building synapses to recreate the problems and the same old patterns and the issues and the habits that have gotten you here. And you've already told me by implication, by being here, that what got you here and what things have been like isn't enough. That's why you're here, okay? And we talk about it science a lot on this show because I'm a nerd. Like I said, I'm a brain surgeon. I'm a neuroscientist. I have publications in the Lancet and the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. I've written chapters in major neurosurgical textbooks. I've got 2 patents of all that stuff. I'm a super nerd, okay? But the reason I love science so much is because it gives us a process by which we can solve problems, by which we can attack something hard and begin to sort it out and get our hands around it and start trying to make sense of it, okay? That's why I love science so much. So it turns out that science gives you a path. It gives you a paradigm, okay? And when I say science, though, I want you to understand that there's several different things that science can mean, okay? You always hear on the news that people say things like trust the science or the science is settled and all that silly stuff because I want you to understand science is never settled, okay? There's not any scientific idea that has lasted more than 200 or 300 years in the world's history. Why? Because as we develop better tools to measure and test things, we learned that the way we thought the world worked actually was just kind of a model, and it really works a different way. For 300 years, the world thought that Isaac Newton had figured out gravity. For 300 years, the physicists thought they had it all sorted out. But then all of a sudden, Einstein came along and said, not so fast. And you know what? What was happening was, as they got better telescopes to be able to look at the planets and see how they were moving, the math that Newton came up with to approximate the orbits of the planets and therefore calculate gravity and how large bodies work together and all that, the math didn't work when we got better able to measure what those planets were actually doing. Newton's equations didn't work. So what they called classical physics, because it had been the prevailing idea for 3 centuries, didn't quite work. And so scientists were having to come up with all these things like what they call constants, these ways to fudge the numbers and make the equations work out to what they observed in nature to try to make Newton's work actually work. It was fine for apples and baseballs, but it didn't work on planets and stars. We needed a different type of math. I'm just saying that to tell you this. For 300 years, all the smart kids thought the science was settled, but it wasn't settled. And then when you started discovering things like they used to think that atoms were the smallest particle there was, and they figured out, wait a minute, atoms are made up of a bunch of other particles, electrons, protons, and neutrons. And then guess what? Those are made up of other particles, gluons and quarks and other particles. So guys like Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg and Einstein came along and said, hang on, Newton got part of this right, but his math really is just a model. It's imprecise, and it works for big things, but it doesn't work for atoms. It doesn't work for subatomic particles. The science isn't settled, friend. And guess what that math did? Guess what happened in the 20th century? We got quantum physics out of it. And from quantum physics, we got microphones and teleprompters and cameras and internets and smartphones and all that stuff that we use every day. So when you hear somebody say the science is settled, they're trying to sell you something, or they're trying to influence you politically. That applies to climate science and vaccine science and all kinds of things. If somebody says the science is settled, your antennas need to go up, because science is never settled. What's settled is our ability to understand that we will learn something tomorrow that will refine something we thought we already knew. That's what's settled. That process is going to keep happening over and over. Science is never settled. So I want you to see that there's 2 different things that I mean when I say science, okay? When we say science with a capital S, we're talking about metonymy. We're talking about this system, this big corporate educational system of people who call themselves scientists, but they're using science like an entity, like a noun, like a thing, okay? All these smart people agree that this is how it is, and you just have to accept it. But real science is with a small s. It's a process. It's a system by which you ask questions, refine and formulate hypotheses, refine those hypotheses with data, and then change the nature of the questions you're asking until you finally figure out what seems to be working and what seems to be an approximation of what's true in a way that you can work with in your life. That's what science really is, okay? When I say I want you to develop an approach that says maybe science can help me, I want you to understand that I'm talking in the context of this show. We're talking about developing a practice and a discipline of using the scientific method for a scientific approach to your life. I want you to use reason and rational decision-making and all those things God gave you to understand that if you use the scientific method to get to something that's closer to truth, you will make better progress in your life. So what's the scientific method? You probably learned it in school. It says you observe something, like you see an apple falling out of a tree. You see that thing that happened with your own eyes, and you try to develop an hypothesis for what might have made that thing happen in the way that it did. Newton noticed that apples always fall down. They don't fall up. He had to figure out there must be a force that makes it fall down. He called that gravity. He wasn't the first one to call it gravity, but he tried to figure out, why does it work that way? So I just want you to notice things in your life, okay? You see this thing happening in your life. You see yourself struggling in a certain way. You see yourself needing to perform differently than you have. You see yourself having the same old habits over and over. You see your relationships failing in the same way over and over. You see yourself having been stuck in grief and not being able to overcome this addiction. You see this thing happening. You observe this phenomenon. You didn't necessarily create it, but you're living in it, okay? Maybe it just came along in your life. You're observing it though now, and you can watch it and you can study it and you can see that it's real, like Newton noticing the apple always falling down. And you begin to formulate a hypothesis. Maybe you say, hey, maybe this happens because of this way, because of this thing. Maybe it's happening because of X, Y, or Z. And you start to study that. You observe it. You apply good principles to it, and you develop an hypothesis, and you say, maybe I could work with this system differently if I changed this thing or if I applied this idea. Maybe I can't seem to change this because I'm stuck, and maybe I'm stuck because I'm thinking about the problem in the same way. So I want you to start thinking about your issues in your life scientifically, okay? Studying them rather than saying, I'm just a loser. This is just how I am. This is just how my family is. This is just how my neurons work. This is just how my brain presents the world to me, and I'm stuck with it. Instead of that, see it as something that can be studied. And knowing that you're not just your brain, that you can change your brain with the character and content of your thoughts, and by bringing different levels of attention and intention to it, that you literally can structurally change anything in your life. Then you can start to apply a good scientific method to making progress. Does that make sense? You see people all the time, I can't deal with this because I was born into this particular family and everybody in my family is this way. I can't deal with this because I'm ADHD. I can't get over this because I was abused when I was 9 years old. I can't overcome this because people that go through this just can't get better. Well, guess what? Open your eyes a little bit wider and look around. And I promise you, you will see somebody who has gone through something similar to what you've gone through who was able to get better. It's not because they're a better person than you. It's because they changed the process by which they were responding to that thing. Gabor Mate famously said, you're not your trauma, you're your response to your trauma. Now, understanding that the trauma is not the thing that can break you, it's your decision of how you respond to that and your series of reactions and brain processes and habits that you develop in response to what you went through that turns your life into what it is. And once you understand that, you are right on the cusp of this massive breakthrough in your life, because you can then apply a scientific process to figuring out how to attack the problem in a different way. If this process isn't working for you, abort the process and try something different. I want you to become incredibly curious about finding a path forward in your own life. I want you to get on the scent of that trail, and I want you to go after it like a hound dog after something he just has to have. I want you to get your nose on the trail, friend, of being curious about how to make progress in your own life, because I'm telling you, there is a path forward. There is a reasonable basis for hope for you, because you're not stuck with the brain that you have, because you have the process of neuroplasticity to change the future for yourself and your generations. Please hear me, my friend. I am not saying that you need to accept responsibility for something that happened to you. I'm just saying that once you understand what happened and you can see it clearly, then the branch point comes, do I want to make this better, or do I want to build my life around having this thing be defining for me? Do I want this trauma, this process to refine me, or do I want it to define me? Do I want to build my life around finding a place to lay the blame for this, or do I want to make it better? Do I want a place to build community of people around me telling me that it's okay and it's not my fault and it's understandable that I'm stuck in this? Or do I want a group of people around me who are going to say, hey, you know what? You can change that. You can heal from that. You can grow from that. You can learn from that. You don't have to stay stuck in that. Is that the kind of people you want to surround yourself with in your life? A good scientist, though, doesn't stop at the observation phase. And the formulation of an hypothesis stage to a good scientist is like, okay, let's test this out. Let's run some experiments to see if I'm right. This is happening because of a certain thing. Or maybe I could fix this by doing this certain thing differently. Let's run some tests. Let's try something new. Let's run some experiments. And if you get bad results from that, you try something different. You don't just quit. You get after it like Newton and Einstein and Bohr and all those guys, and you say, I'm going to test this and expand my hypothesis and change it and revise it and be willing to change approaches until I find something that reliably works. Critically evaluate your data You don't just run the experiment once, and if it doesn't work, you go back to what you were doing before. You don't dig your heels into saying, this is how I approach things in my life, and if it doesn't work, then I'm just going to numb myself to it or give up or become cynical or decide that nothing can help me. That's not what we do as good scientists, okay? Friend, I'm telling you, science is never settled. And if you decide to be a good scientist for your own life, you won't commit malpractice as much anymore, because you become really interested in finding a path forward. And I want you to be interested in knowing what the truth is for your life, okay? That's what I want. I want you to change your approach. If you're stuck, if you've been trying, nothing can help me, and it's not working, you've tried something can help me, and it's not enough, and you've hit this massive thing or this big problem in your life, and you need something better, then adopt a scientific approach, okay? Challenge your ideas. Change your hypothesis. Apply good reasoning and decided to get after it. Don't slurp back down to a previous approach that didn't work in the first place. Okay? Don't let the gravity of your old life pull you back in to maybe something can help or maybe nothing can help. Okay? And I just want to tell you that the maybe science can help me approach will make you feel better. It will help you get free from some of the places you've been stuck in your life, okay? It will help you, I promise. You'll get to a different point on that curve that we talked about. Now, I also want to tell you, approaches have consequences, okay? One of the consequences is some people don't like it when you make positive changes in your life. Just like in the scientific community, there's always the guy who tries to blackball the person who comes up with a new system because it threatens their system. Somebody got famous on an approach or an experiment or a paper that they wrote, and somebody else comes along with science that's going to supersede that, and they don't like it, okay? There's going to be somebody in your life who will push back, and I'm just here to tell you, maybe they're not your people, okay? You need to find some people who will encourage you to make progress in your life, who will encourage you to overcome bad responses that you've had before and making new ones, who will be part of that community, a great cloud of witnesses who will cheer you on. When you start making progress, they're going to be behind you all the way, okay? I can tell you the worst moment in my life when I was devastated after losing my son, my wife, Lisa, was my person who got behind me and said, we are going to figure out how to find our feet again. We are going to figure out how to find our hope again. We are not going to let this thing destroy us, okay? Will we ever stop being sad? No. But can we move forward anyway? And guess what happens when you start doing that? You find purpose. You find meaning. And yes, you find hope again. You find happiness again. So friend, you need to get yourself an approach that works. And the maybe science can help you approach will help you. I promise it will. If you're willing to be a good scientist, start observing things a little more carefully, not assuming that you're stuck with the way things have always been, being willing to change your hypothesis when the experiments and the data don't bear it out, you'll start making progress. But here's one more consequence, okay? There might come a point in time when you find that that scientific approach is leading you to some observations that science can't explain, okay? There might come a time when you get to where you start seeing that there's some philosophical things you can't explain with science alone. And you see somebody like me coming along and saying, hey, this scripture and that scripture said that if you do this, it's going to happen this way. And you see the science backing that up. And you start to see that people flourish when they apply these good principles that are not scientific principles to your life. And then science comes along and says, those things are true. Those things are right. There might come a time when you need something more than science can give you. And that's what the next approach is for. Next week, we're going to talk about another approach. We're always talking on this show about smashing faith and science together, okay? I gave you a lot more in the book, by the way, about the maybe science can help me approach. Next week, I'm going to give you one approach past that because I think it will be helpful to you. Okay, friend, that's enough for today. We've covered a lot of ground. We've reminded you of all these different approaches. We got one more to cover next week. But for now, I just want you to understand, if you apply a disciplined approach to examining the things you're going through and applying some research and a good scientific method to moving forward, you will make more progress than you can make with the nothing can help me or the maybe something can help me approach. And you'll start becoming healthier and feeling better and being happier. There's an approach that's even better than that. I'm going to teach it to you next week. But for now, remember, you can't change your life until you change your mind. The very good news, my friend, is that you can start today. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please subscribe wherever you listen and be sure to follow me at Dr. Lee Warren on Instagram and YouTube. And to get the most out of the show, make sure to get my free weekly self-brain surgery prescriptions. Sign up at drleewarren.substack.com and I'll send you the powerful thought biopsy worksheet for free. drleewarren.substack.com. Every Sunday since 2014, I've been bringing you my best prescriptions for how you can smash faith and neuroscience together to become healthier, feel better, and be happier starting today. I'm Dr. Lee Warren reminding you to have a very self-brain surgery day.